But I appreciate everybody spending a little bit of time. I do want to make this a little bit informal. I don't want to be too formal here today, but let me just start first by telling you a quick story. Got back on Thursday, and Friday night I was watching television. I was here in Sacramento, and I don't know what news station it was on, but one of the news channels, there was a story that said the budget was being held up and that the governor couldn't deliver or convince Republicans to vote for a budget, and Speaker Nunez is away on a trip in Paris. And so I thought to myself, wait a minute, am I here? Who am I? So that was somewhat funny. And then I guess over the weekend I said that again. But I am back. I got back last Thursday to obviously what is a very disturbing set of circumstances here in California. And I say set of circumstances because I think that more than one thing has gone wrong. But I do believe that there is reason for us to pause and to be thoughtful about what got us in this mess in the first place. And I really believe the more I think about this, that at the core of the problem that California faces with its budget impasse is a very strict requirement for budget passage that is totally incongruent and inconsistent with what constitutes democratic governance. It's not the majority governing. In this case, it's not even 2/3 of the total number of members of the state legislature, which is 120. 72 of us have already delivered or pushed in the Assembly, the green button in the Assembly, cast a vote in favor of the budget that we passed in the Assembly, a budget that has the healthiest reserve that we have ever seen, at least in the last 3 decades. A budget that had an operating deficit that was way below what we anticipated in the conference report, and certainly lower than the governor's operating deficit at $700 million. And a budget, needless to say, that didn't totally reflect all of the democratic priorities, and some things there that we took. Some pretty big hits that we took in the budget. On public transportation, that was a big hit. That was a huge hit. And the pressure was on during the course of the negotiations to eliminate that. But I believe it's a very responsible budget. People talked about, well, what about the tax credit issue? That was not part of the budget. That was a side agreement that both Republican leader Michael Belanes and I knew would not see the light of day in the Senate. It was pretty clear. But for the Assembly Republicans, I believe it was an opportunity for them to express a priority that they believe is important, that will help stimulate the California economy. I'm not a big advocate of tax credits myself. I see it in some ways as, you sort of give to people who already have and hope that works its way and filters its way down to the people that don't have it and helps stimulate the economy in that sense. And I like building the economy from the bottom up and not the top down, but it is what it is. And, a bit disappointing, to be honest with you, to have received a letter from Senator Parada knocking me on that. I let that go. But not the first time I get a letter from my friend in the Senate expressing his disapproval of what the Assembly does. I figure if I wrote a letter to Senator Parada every time I disapproved of something he did, we'd have a stack of papers probably about that big. But that's not the reason why you are here today. I believe that what we're facing in this state is a real collapse of democratic governance. A collapse that, whether the voters know it or not, You know, whether somebody wants to spin it in one way to point the finger in one direction or another, at the end of the day, the fundamental problem is that we are facing, I think, a very tough question before us. And that is, do we want to continue being one of 3 states in the entire country that has a 2/3 voter threshold on the passage of a budget? Even Tom McClintock, I guess I read, agrees that we should have a simple majority budget. Of course, for taxes, he wants 2/3, but a simple majority vote. And his reasoning is, let's point the finger at the people who are responsible for not balancing the budget and generating excessive budget gaps. If that's the case, you know, for whatever reasoning, for all the wrong reasons, he agrees with the same thing I agree with, and that is that California ought not allow for this kind of budget sabotage that is taking place